Good morning, everybody. A lot of you have requested that I paint a little girl um, and do different colors with her. So this little tutorial you can purchase online for $15, and the link is right here on the video. And if you want the supplies are $15 also, plus $5 shipping, so that is $20. And you will receive 6 colors of paint, a canvas, a Sharpie, a color picture, instructions, and a line drawing. So we're going to go ahead and start. And after you trace your pattern onto the canvas, what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline it with my Sharpie. And I use an ultra fine point Sharpie. And it doesn't matter that just have to wait to trace these. And it doesn't matter if your lines are straight or not straight. It doesn't matter. This is a very loose pattern, and the paints is what's going to make it really stand out. So take your time, and there's no right or wrongs for these. This is a little girl here. This is her little face, and this is her little hat, kind of scarf. And here are her little eyes, and no mouth. Okay, so what do you do with a canvas when you buy it? Usually people either paint on it or trace right on it. What I like to do is trace my pattern first. Like right here, how I did the little doll. I like to trace her first because then I know where I'm going. And you can always put paint on top of paint. That doesn't matter. So I'm going to put some other little circle ones on here just to make it a little different. Okay. So now, if you have white paint, what I like to do is put a couple of drops of white paint in my background. And I'm going to take my brush. It doesn't matter what brush you use for the background. And what I do is I wet my brush a little bit. See that? And then what I do is I spread the paint around just to coat my canvas. This way, if there's any little areas that need touching up, and don't worry about us covering the lines with the pen. That is perfectly fine. You can go over them once they dry. And what that does is it gives me like a clean slate. If I was to do this before I do the pen work, sometimes the pen work has like little fibers or something that come off and they go into your background. This way you avoid that altogether. So see, if you go left and right and up and down, that will take care of your background. So then what I do is I take my brush and I clean it out. And you take a small round brush. I happen to have a number 7 sharp brush. And what I do is I'm going to take a little bit of, this is called warm beige. And I'm going to just fill in her face. And I start in the middle and work around. And at the beginning, it's going to be a little bit lighter. And that's okay. We can always go around it twice. And we're going to do her little neck and her arms. Whoops. Okay. And this is just so that we know where the little face is and where we're going to go with it. Now her dress, a lot of people have asked me, oh, do a pink little dress for a girl. And I said, okay. So what I do is I take my pink paint, which this one happens to be, believe it or not, light magenta. And I just rub it on the background. See that? I'm just going, if I go slow, you can see the motion of my brush. I'm just kind of picking it up, almost like sweeping the floor. See that? And it doesn't matter that you cover the whole surface. A lot of times people make that mistake. They go and paint the whole thing one solid one. Oh, you see what happened there? That's too solid for me. So I rinsed my brush out completely and picked up a little bit of that paint, and I go around it. See that? the looser you do it, the better off you are. So right now we have a colored background, and if you can notice, some of it is dark, some of it is light, and that we will fix later. Now we have those little centers that we need to fill in, and I'm gonna take a little bit of lilac. This happens to be light violet, and I'm gonna fill in my little holes with that color. And I'm gonna do those a little bit more solid. And take your time going around the little circles. And you cover most of them, because those little circles that are in between there, we're not gonna cover yet. I'll go around it. I rinse my brush, come back again and load it. Back here, make a little circle. That's a solid one. Here's another solid one. And another one. And one here on the side. And another one up here. Now we're going to have to give these a second coat if we want them a little bit more solid, but we'll decide that when we're done. Now this here is part of her dress. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of that pink again, and I'm going to come here and I'm going to put that on a little bit more solid. And I'm going to come here and brush it on here. Okay. Now for her scarf, I'm going to make this a little bit red. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a little bit of my yellow here with a little bit of red. See that? And I'm going to fill it in here. And the whole idea is you have to let things dry. This is not a wet on wet technique. This is shading and doing a pen and ink. So you don't want to really put everything on at one time. So I'm going to come back with my medium beige color, and I'm going to do her face again. And see how that is getting darker? I'm doing her arms, her little neck, and her arms again. Now for the dress, I don't want to put a lot of color in the dress because then it's going to look kind of wonky, and we don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back. My brush is just almost dry, and I'm going to come here and pick up some of that lilac, and that's going to be a little bit more solid. See that? And I missed that one before. And I'm going to come here, fill this one in, come back, okay, now we have, oh, oops, one more. We have this one here. Okay, now I'm going to rinse my brush completely. Now if I was to keep going over these colors here, they're wet. And what's going to happen is if you go over it again, you're going to pick up the paint. You're going to want to put paint on it. See, like here, if I do that, see how it picked up my paint? Well, you don't want to do that. Once you put the paint down, just let it be. Here I have a little bit of a burnt orange, and it's almost like a red. So I'm going to come in here and put a little bit of that color in the background here and make this area here just a little bit darker. See that? Okay. I'm gonna let this area dry, and I'm gonna come over her face, and I need to do some shading color. So I'm gonna take that same little orange color, and I'm gonna come right underneath her chin. It's a little area here, not too big. My brush now is dried almost completely, but it has a nice little point to it. So if you notice, here is where the shading happens. And I have barely any paint in my brush. And I'm going to come right on top here a little bit. And see how her face is getting a little bit of a deeper color. She's not so red. So what we don't want is a line like that. So what I do is I wipe my brush completely, and from the outside I push my paint back, and it gives me a more natural look. See that? Then we want to do the same thing with her arms. So I'm going to take a little bit of that orange here, and I'm going to come on the side and shade a little bit. Wipe my brush completely and just blend it together on her neck. So if you can see, this is already blending together, right? So now I'm going to take a little bit of my red and I'm going to put it in the little circles. So I'm going to put some red in here because she's nice and bright. And this is the little girl going to the ball, right? Like Cinderella. And I'm going to put another little red mark here and one in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe my brush, and whatever's left over, I'm going to come in here and make this area a little bit darker. See that? I'm going to take that and mix it together. You don't need 20 colors of paint to do a project. Okay, if you just have some nice colors, you can have a beautiful project and not worry about it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to let that dry a little bit. And I like Diax Ultramarine Violet to shade those. So all you need is a drop of this. And this is just a tad darker than the little circles. So I'm going to take a little bit of my paint and put it on the side of my brush. I don't need more than that. And I'm going to come in here and shade that. But it's still a little bit too wet, so we'll let it sit. I'm going to take some of my orange and my red mixture. See that? And I'm just using the side of my brush. Just a little bit on the side here. And I'm going to come right in here on the top and right above her head here and add some of that color. And can you tell that right here and everything is starting to shade? And we'll take a little bit of that color and just put a tad of it under her chin. And now it's starting to look a little bit like something, isn't it? Okay, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna have to darken some of these areas here to shade, and you should always shade in the same direction. So if you're gonna shade from the bottom, shade from the bottom. If you're gonna shade from the left, always, your right, my left. Shade from the right. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of that mixture of the red and the orange, and I'm gonna come on the sides here and shade a little bit of her red dress. And then we need to do the little pleats. So for that, I keep my brush straight down and do the pleats. See, now she's starting to look like something. And take your time doing this. That you're not in a marathon. You don't have to be anywhere right now. So I'll take my violet color and go around these. And what I'm doing is I'm just putting color on the very tip of my brush. See that? There's no paint on this side of the brush. So I'm going to shade that. I'm starting to like her a lot. Okay, so we need to do something with her little dress here. So I'm going to take my red again and my orange. And these, remember, are techniques for you to use on anything that you're painting. This doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to paint this little girl. But if you can learn something from this technique, take your time. Okay, don't rush through it. A lot of times people just want to paint and they want to they see the end product and it's like, oh well, I want mine to look like that. Well, sometimes the first one doesn't look like that to me. So I'm just going to take a little bit of white and I'm going to highlight here on the top of her dress. And I'm going to do a little bit on her face. I'm going to take a little bit of that medium and that white and put a little bit over here on her face. And her arms. Whoops, a little bit too much. Okay. So now we know that her face has to have a little bit more color on it, and we know that these are so dark that they need to lighten up. So what we do is, again, we stay with the same color. And I'm going to take a little bit of that light violet and white, and I'm going to mix it together. And I'm going to come on the opposite side. Let me see if I think I got too much paint in there. Let me rinse it out. So again, I'm going to take a little bit of my light purple and my white, and I'm going to mix it into my palette to make a light purple. And I'm going to come on the opposite side of where I shaded and put some of that color in. If it's not light enough for you, I think it should be lighter. I like it lighter. I'm going to put a little white in here. Oh yeah, much better. And what that does is it highlights the little right side of my little circles here. Okay. Now, we don't want the background to stay just the way it is. So I'm just going to put a little bit of water in there, and with some light blue, I'm going to come here on the background and add some color. And I'm going to do the other side. See, and I'm not making it solid. I'm just putting some color in my background. Now we want to put some shades underneath here to make this pop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of that red and orange mix that we did. And I'm going to put it on the side of my brush, just a little bit right here. And I'm going to go underneath it and make that pop. See that? I'm gonna rinse my brush out completely and just move it out so that it doesn't look like one big circle around it. With my round brush, I'm gonna take a little bit of white on the tip here, and I'm gonna put little eyelets on my little purple circles here. And I'm gonna come back for my little red circles, and I'm gonna take my red, 3/4 red and 1/4 orange, and I'm gonna come in here and make these darker. See that? Now these little guys are gonna pop. Cool. We're almost there. We just need now to take a little bit more of the blue and put it in our background because it's a little bit too white. So I'm going to take some of my blue. Sometimes it's better to do less when you start out with and then do more. So I'm just going to do my background. Do a little bit more on this side. And just scrub it in. And I'm going to do a little bit more of her arms. Doing just my orange, deep orange here. And I'm going to put it here on the side. And right here in the side of her face. Now when all of this dries, like tomorrow, notice that I said tomorrow, so you don't rush into it today. You're going to come back with your Pigma pen, your Sharpie, whatever it is that you use at home to do your line work. And you're going to come back and you're going to bring the lines back. If you do it while it's wet, it's not going to happen. And you can do the same thing with the eyes. Use your little Sharpie to put the eyes on. So I hope you enjoy this project. And meet me here again for something new. Not sure what we'll paint next, but it will be something fun, I promise. Okay, now we assume that this is all dry. So we're gonna come back. Hold on one second. Let me just position this just perfect so you can see it. Okay, so now I'm gonna come back with my pen and give it all the detail it needs. So see that once you paint it and you let it dry and you're patient enough to let it dry, then you can come here and bring back all the features of your drawing. And to me, it makes it look so much better once you do the line work on it. And I just zigzag my lines. See that? I'm not really like, oh, you know, there's a line there. No, don't do that. Just kind of zigzag it and come in here. Go underneath these little guys here. She has a little hat, right? Or a little bandana. So I come back here. I'm going to put some little stitch marks on it. And that gives me all the little details. And I'm going to do her eyes. I'm putting a little bit of black here so that we can see her. And some little hairs, right? Doesn't she need some little hairs here to stick out? She looks like a little girl. Go do this side, right? And now you can put some designs back in here if you want, but don't put any paint. You can even put some little circles here and not color them. Sign it. Always remember to sign your pieces. And then what I would do is right here where the blue is, I'll make that blue a little bit darker just where her dress is so that it can have some contrast. So I'm just going to take that light blue again. And I'm going to come right here to the side of her dress, put our blue, rinse it out, okay? And then just with a clean brush, walk it out. Okay, and I'm going to do the other side again. I'm going to take that light blue, come here, put some blue on the background. And last but not least, I know people love when I do these little drips. So I'm going to take a little bit of my purple here. And I'm going to try it first on my plate to see if it specks. Not enough. So come here, do it again. No, not wet enough. Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to tap it with my brush. And voila, we have a painting. So send me pictures if you decide to paint her and let me know how it went. And as always, if you have any questions, just email me or just put something in the comments and I'll be happy to help you out. Enjoy your little girl. Thank you.